Welcome back to Life 100 Podcast. I am Rosie, and it's so great to share with you this space featuring insightful stories, remarkable guests, and everyday tips for life. A space in where we celebrate our diversity, our creativity, and all things that are possible when we live to the fullest by living life at 100. I had the opportunity to listen to our guest explaining the topic of emotions. And it was so significant that I knew one day she will be with us sharing her passion, sharing her knowledge, and her gift of explaining concepts in a very relatable way. It is our good fortune to have Kate with us today. Hi, Kate. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me, Rosie.
I am so glad that you're able to share your explanations of emotion. It was refreshing, and it's not a matter of we agree or disagree, but a way to listen to someone explaining that will clarify what those emotions are. So let's listen to this explanation of emotions. Let's listen to Emotions 101 with Kate.
Thanks, Rosie. Emotions are such an important part of our everyday life. I like to think of them as the energy behind what we do, kind of the energy behind thought and action. And before we get into more of what emotions are, I want to talk about where they exist. And that is with the self and in the environment. So when you have yourself, your physical body, and you are interacting in your space, in your environment. So right now you might be in the car, you might be in your house, you might be taking a walk. And if you kind of look around you, that is what your environment is. And so emotions happen when we interact with our environment and we receive information through our senses. We have our eyes, our ears, nose, mouth, and touch. Those are our five senses. When we are interacting and there is a stimulus outside of us in our environment, that gives us information to our brain and our body. In our body, we have a brain, we have a heart, and we have our gut. Our brain is responsible for thoughts. Our heart is where the emotions happen. And then our gut is where our intuition lies. So if you're kind of looking at yourself right now, those are the three kind of main components to yourself that exists in an environment. In my video, I talked about the three main negative emotions that happen. And there are positive emotions, of course. The difference being that these three main negative emotions, when they get stuck in our body, they cause negative consequences like physical health issues, mental health issues, and they can keep us down. Those three negative emotions that we experience are sadness, anger, and fear. Now, there might be a misconception that negative emotions mean bad. And that is not the case at all. It simply means there is a negative charge, and that if you don't address them as you're experiencing them, they can get physically stuck like little tangles, like little knots in our body, and have negative consequences, like I mentioned before. The really cool way to understand these three negative emotions and how you can understand them in your daily life is by thinking about them on a timeline. Say you're going through your day and you're just feeling really heavy and you find yourself thinking about the past, either in a positive way or a negative way. That negative emotion is sadness. It is a heavy feeling in your body. And what's underneath sadness is a longing. It's a yearning for something. And it's important to recognize that it's happening. It can be too when you're feeling just really low energy and really heavy. That's what sadness is. And then on the flip side, there's fear. Fear is based more in the future. It is kind of compulsively thinking about things that haven't happened that could. And the difference between kind of thinking ahead and planning and fear, the difference in those two is that fear is kind of compulsive and it feels kind of like an empty mind energy. Whereas sadness, you feel it really in your body. Fear kind of being stuck in your head. So it's really important to acknowledge when you're feeling fearful because it can bring your body back down. There's a phrase called name it to tame it. So that's why it's so important to understand what these emotions are as they're happening. And then the third negative emotion is anger. And this is such an important emotion because it is what we are experiencing in the present. If you can get out of your sadness and get out of your fear and come back into the now, you are going to have a physical kind of body energy, which is anger. And anger is there to give you the energy to do something about your situation. And anger hasn't been validated in so many of us. It is our body's response to something happening in our environment. So sadness is in the past, fear is in the future, and anger is in the present. And I talk about the ways to kind of heal these emotions too. The first step is to label them. Name it to tame it. Identify if you're feeling sadness. Identify if you're feeling fear. Identify if it's anger and ask yourself, what can I do? Number 2, put it into context. Use your senses to look around you and ask yourself, what am I feeling and what is happening? What is the relationship between the two? And then once you do that, number 3, you can feel it. Actually feel it in your body. Physically feel it. The sadness is a heavy feeling. The fear is an empty mind energy. And the anger gives you energy to do something. And once you feel it, you understand its purpose, you can physically let it go. You can breathe and bring yourself back down to a physical, calm place. That way, you can release it out of your body and it's not getting stuck. And then the last thing to do is learn. Learn from it. Thank it for being there. Honor it for its purpose and know that your body has a reason that it's doing it. Those are the 3 main negative emotions. Emotions being physical reactions to our environment. And this really fuels everything that we do. And that's why it's so important to understand this.
What a significant way to explain it. If you are a visual person and you would like to see what she is explaining, I invite you to go to the Instagram post that she has on January 17 and it's labeled Emotion 101. Kate, you do such a beautiful visual design on how this works and you explaining it in such a way that it is very simple to understand. And another part that I was interested in, that concept of honoring and recognizing these emotions that as we grow, sometimes we are not allowed to express, especially that middle emotion, the one in the center that you mentioned, the one in the present, which is anger. Sometimes when we are young and express the fact that I am sad, the comeback is, what are you sad all about? You have a roof over your head, you have food to eat, and go on. Or not even allowed to feel angry. And fear is, what are you afraid for? I'm here to protect you. So how all this come into play?
And you make such a good point, Rosie. When we were kids, I think just generationally, there has not been an understanding of emotion. Just in society, we're focused on making ends meet, going to work, making money, taking care of the basic needs of our family. That these kind of emotional dynamics haven't been prioritized before. But now, especially with this past year, when we're all in our homes and we're dealing with the realities of life, but we're also dealing with these incredible relationships that are so important more than ever. And when it comes to anger especially, there is a myth that anger is destructive. Acting on your anger and honoring it is just feeling it, asking it what it has to teach you about what needs to change in your environment, and approaching it in an effective way that preserves your relationships and yourself. But when you don't act on it and it kind of builds up in your body, it can come out as irritability or as rage. And over time, when you ignore it long enough, that's when I kind of mentioned those negative physical health effects that it can have.
Yeah, so the point is not ignoring it, because then it comes out of control. But acknowledging that we have, and what does this mean, and what do I need to do? Seeing it in a way of addressing it, but acknowledging and addressing it, that is the key. Allowing
really
ourselves to acknowledge these emotions. And that is so valuable. I used to think that was cultural, but it's a global phenomenon. And also it has to do with gender. Some genders are allowed to feel this way, but not allowed to express this other feeling. And what that does is not acknowledging and then addressing it in a healthy way. And then what we see is an explosion that leads to things that are not good for anyone, right?
Exactly. And what you said is so important, because it really does play out in individual ways. Like you said, with gender, there's a cultural expectations around what it looks like too.
Yes, absolutely. And during this global pandemic, one thing has happened that has never happened from the time that I've been alive. And that is that all of us as a global community are going through the same thing at the same time. And it has come to the point in where we see in social media, where do we know what we are doing? Because now we are allowed to say, wait a minute, I don't know about this. We are faced with the uncertainty globally as a unit. And now I think more acceptable to talk about the unknown in a way of, I cannot deal with this, I need help. And how it's important to find help to deal with these emotions.
It is so important. There is a priority like there's never been on relationship and connection. Our emotions are such a huge part of that. And emotions are universal. There is not one person on this planet that doesn't experience these emotions in significant ways. Like you said, there are just cultural, gender, on a small level, on a big level, there are barriers and obstacles, and it's usually of ignorance. People are doing the best they can with what they know. And so there hasn't been room for things like emotions before to be a conversation. And now I think there is, because there's such an emphasis on how fragile we are as humans and how much we do need each other.
Absolutely. And this is one of the positive things about social media. Because if you are not exposed to different ways of seeing life, you're just bound to perhaps repeat what you have learned. But when you're exposed to different cultures, different people, and that was social media, even if you cannot leave your home, you can see different perspectives. And it brings, oh, wow, wait a minute. It is okay to talk about mental health. It is okay to acknowledge that I am afraid, that I am angry, that I am sad. And it is okay to look for help.
In the past 2 years now, with COVID, at the very least, we are not alone with what we feel. And that other people in other parts of the world are experiencing similar things. I'm in school to be a therapist, and in learning all of this formal knowledge about mental, emotional, and relational health, I have tried my best to apply it to my own life, because as a mental health professional, I want to make sure that I'm doing things that I help other people do. And that helps me feel more aligned and integrated
And more people can relate to you because this concept has been discussed for many years, but not everybody connect with other people. And you have a gift that people will connect with you and you are able to share that knowledge that they can benefit because it's a matter of connection. And that connection is an invitation for a concept or an explanation that we probably heard before, but we didn't even pay attention because we could not connect with the person. So the way that you are doing it is beautiful because you create that connection. And I would like to thank you for not keeping that gift to yourself, for sharing that gift with us like you're doing because there are so many benefits. On that post that you have on social media, the reviews and people say, yes, I get it. Or wow, that brings clarity. And that is so wonderful. So thank you for bringing it forward because we are benefiting from it. What is next for you? Where are you going from this point on?
At this point, I'm loving engaging and building a community because I can be visual and I can draw things. And like you said before, that's really helpful. I'm going to continue to post and continue to work on my degree. And this right here is such an amazing opportunity. So I'm excited to where this takes me.
Because you are a therapist in training. You are exposed to not only the latest, but how we can take what we learned today and bring it to the masses. And what other message would you like to share with us?
I think that there is so much pain and trauma that's happened over the past 2 years, but so much beauty and connection kind of amidst all of it. And I think that if we want to change the world around us, it starts with ourselves and just really having compassion for ourselves and everything we've been through the past 2 years. So I hope and wish upon anybody listening to this that you know how resilient and strong you are and just having compassion for your experience and bringing that to other people. The world needs your gifts. And Rosie, I'm so thankful to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. I am thankful for you to be here. And what a beautiful way to conclude this episode with the hope that, yes, there are ways that we can improve our quality of life by bringing this gift to ourselves of understanding, of acknowledgement, and the power that we have within ourselves to take that information and make something positive for a better quality of life.
Absolutely. And you're doing better than you think.
There we go. The only thing I need to add to that is, Kate, how to get in touch with you to see your content.
Sure. My website is restoringrelationships.com. My email address is on there. And if you were more interested in looking at videos, you can go on TikTok. My username is Restoring Relationships, and I have an Instagram, Restoring Relationships, KGL.
Beautiful. Now you know how to go and see the visual explanation and how to get in touch with Kate, who is doing an amazing job explaining topics that we need for everyday life. Thank you so much, Kate, for being with us. And I'm looking forward to another episode with new concepts to explain.
Thank you so much, Rosie.
What a great conversation. And thank you for sharing this message, for being part of this journey. And I invite you to visit her social media that is full of insight and inspiration. And once again, thank you for listening and leave a comment and subscribe. Follow us because like I always say, life is better when you live it at 100.